But we'd seen from the Chinese market, which had obviously gone through COVID very, very early, that there was potential for a market to bounce back. There was no guarantee that we would respond in the same way as the Chinese market. Very, very different circumstances. But it felt that combined with what we were seeing from our audience, that there would be some kind of pent-up demand. I think what we then saw was frustration, if I'm honest, from people trying to make inquiries about cars but getting no response. I think it felt like a lot of retailers were caught by surprise by the severity of the lockdown. And understandably, obviously, as they tried to protect their businesses, they just furloughed en masse. And that left a wall of silence for our consumers to deal with, which they found frustrating. And it was frustrating, too, to see that the dealers that did keep responding to the leads, there were far, far fewer leads, but they were far more qualified. And they were selling cars. We could see through our platform the conversations there. I'm pleased there was one Kia dealer up north who was responding to leads and was selling cars. And we could see that they were one of the great examples we had. And I think as we've come out the other side, I think there are two main trends. The first one is that while people are much more willing to do their research online and take it that bit further through to talking to the dealer online, more than 70% still want to complete the transaction in the retail environment. And it's probably worth a little aside of just mentioning, we've seen what happens when retailers are taken out of the equation in the last few months. The market stops.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. If you're new to the show, it's all about helping people in the automotive industry to learn, prosper and grow. I'm super excited for today's guest and I'm looking forward to getting their valuable knowledge into the hands of our automotive audience. I'm Tanesha Stafford, the co-founder of Armchair Marketing, and this is the Armchair Show. I'm going to hand you over to our more than capable host, Mark Ellis. But before I do, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our amazing supporters here at the Armchair Show. We are absolutely blessed to have the support of our wonderful partners, eBay Motors Group. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, eBay Motors are doing some wonderful things at the moment. eBay, Gumtree and Motors.co.uk have joined forces to become the eBay Motors Group, along with their partner brands like Partners, Top Gear, RAC and more, which makes it easy for dealers to advertise in multiple places all at once. And that means as a dealer, you can maximise the visibility of your stock in many places all at once. It doesn't matter if you're a small dealer or a large dealer group, you can get the support you need.
Hi, and welcome back to the Armchair Show. Continuing our remote recordings, I'm at my home studio, and obviously we've got Tanesha, my co-host, in the Armchair studio. How are you doing, Tanesha?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, looking forward to today's show. Some brilliant guests on and excited.
As always, yeah, we've got two brand new guests actually, which is fantastic. So we'll go straight over to David Hilbert, the Marketing Director at Kia. David, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Pleased to join your show.
Great stuff. And how are you getting through lockdown? How have things been?
Yeah, it's been an interesting few weeks, hasn't it? New ways of working, but getting a lot done. Really working hard with the team, and quite proud of all the work they've done in the last few weeks, to be honest.
Awesome, excellent. And we've also got on the line Jim Holder, who is the Editorial Director at What Car. Jim, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's been an exciting few weeks and months. Perhaps not exciting in the way we would have liked, but certainly a challenge that we've embraced. I had to embrace. And it's nice to at least see chinks of light in the tunnel, and let's hope they last.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're recording obviously at the moment when the dealerships are slowly reopening, aren't they? So fingers crossed things are getting a bit more positive, which is great. We've got lots to discuss as always today, but as always, we'd like to get to know our guests a little bit better, as I'm sure our audience would as well. So David, just if we could start with yourself, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Kia.
So Marketing Director at Kia. I've been with the brand for 3.5 years. Been in the industry since 2004, and responsible for all the above the line marketing, product planning, production planning for Kia in the UK. Fantastic role, and exciting industry to be a part of.
Excellent. And what was your journey to Kia? What did you how did you get to where you are now?
Good question. So So obviously went to university. When I left university, actually went into retail. So worked for a department store, so Debenhams head office, in the purchasing team to start off with. And my first career move was then moving across to Toyota. So with Toyota for 12 years, and did a variety of roles at Toyota, and then in 2016 moved across to be marketing director at Kia.
Jim, for yourself, how did you get to what car? What journey did you take?
I was always a car nut, particularly motorsport. So I started at Haymarket over 20 years ago, starting on the motorsport titles, covering everything Formula One, World Rallying, eventually over a 10-year career. Then wanted my weekends back, so moved across to the road car side and ping-ponged between what car and auto car, two Haymarket titles, back and forth for many years. But I've had a sort of overseeing role for all of our automotive titles now for 4 years. And what's really changed for us, of course, is this transition. Like all publishers, we're looking for different ways to reach different audiences, and most notably that is the move of What Car into trying to link our audience directly to car retailers.
And how are you finding that? Is that proving challenging, or is it fairly smooth transition?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. There are plenty of people trying to do it, plenty of well-funded people trying to do it. Not many of them making any money, which of course I'm afraid is the end goal of it. It's not a light switch. You can't just switch it on and go. But what we've seen is exponential growth, and it feels like every month there's another step forward. Even throughout lockdown, not throughout lockdown, but as we came out of lockdown very early on, our number of leads we were taking from our readers through to retailers was higher than it had been even in February last week. February being the peak really season for that sort of thing. So I think people are more switched on. They're much more open to researching and at least linking to a dealership online. Yeah. And I think that will grow. I don't think it will replace retailers at all, but I do think it will grow. We want to lead that market, and there are obviously some very tough competition. We have fortunate that we have a very broad base of income. We don't rely on this as one source, and that allows us to keep going in an entirely sort of positive financial way and keep pushing on at it.
That's brilliant. It's all about being adaptable, isn't it? I think now more than ever, definitely. And David, just for yourself, we can't avoid obviously COVID-19. We're still filming at the moment at a time when it's still very much a thing and is impacting everyone's lives. What are Kia doing to help customers be safe now that the dealerships are reopening?
Obviously this week our dealerships, as you say, have just reopened, and we're trying to get across all the measures that we're taking to ensure the safety of our customers and also our staff. So we've just kind of updated our website with a strapline: "We are open, we are safer, we are stronger." On there, we've got some short animations and content which kind of illustrates the social distancing measures we've been taking at our dealerships. Obviously, a lot of our dealer partners have been doing the same through social channels in terms of the processes we've got in place, the signage at point of sale, in place, just to make sure that customers know where to go, and obviously trying to get customers to book appointments as opposed to just to do walk-ins. So we're trying to get that across in all that we do, and to give that kind of peace of mind, because it's so important that we get the industry going again. It's an important industry for the economy, and we shouldn't forget as well, in terms of social distancing. Well, what better way to have social distancing if you need to travel further afield by your own car? So that's something that we're trying to get across. When I mentioned our statement, "We are open, we are safe, we are stronger." The stronger element, over the period of the lockdown, we've been taking more awards. So we want to show people that actually during that time we continue to go from strength to strength as a brand. So it's all about trying to give customers that confidence to go back into the showrooms.
Yeah, and how are they responding to that?
Yeah, very well. I mean, just looking at the first few days of this month, I mean, web traffic, it's interesting. Jim was saying the same for their site. So we're about 25 to 30% up in terms of unique users for the first few days of this month. In terms of leads coming through the Kia.com and through dealer sites as well, it's very strong. In fact, it's higher than it's been for this year. To be honest, it's the daily leads coming through are good. So it kind of reinforces some of the insight that I've been reading from the likes of, Haymarket, What Car, and Auto Trader, that there's this kind of, there is that demand there that people have deferred, obviously, the purchase and inquiry. Hopefully that continues. Obviously, we'll have to see.
Yeah, that's so positive, isn't it? And that links back, as you've mentioned, David, to Jim. You did a kind of weekly insights report, didn't you? That looked at 4,000 consumers, I believe. What were the key findings from that? What did that reveal about the way consumers are feeling at the moment?
I think we tried to adapt the survey as the weeks went on, and we're into the 10th week now. So it was very much an attempt to look at what was a very rapidly moving picture among consumers. I think the first thing we really got a grasp on very early was just how this pent-up demand was building and how it would come through. And we were accused quite early on of clutching at straws, trying to be positive in negative times. And we did question ourselves a lot of the time. Was this data true? Were we just looking for those green shoots too early? But we'd seen from the Chinese market, which had obviously gone through COVID very, very early, that there was potential for a market to bounce back. There was no guarantee that we would respond in the same way as the Chinese market. Very, very different circumstances. But it felt that combined with what we were seeing from our audience, that there would be some kind of pent-up demand. I think what we then saw was frustration, if I'm honest, from people trying to make inquiries about cars but getting no response. I think it felt like a lot of retailers were caught by surprise by the severity of the lockdown. And understandably, obviously, as they tried to protect their businesses, they just furloughed en masse. And that left a wall of silence for our consumers to deal with, which they found frustrating. And it was frustrating, too, to see that the dealers that did keep responding to the leads, there were far, far fewer leads, but they were far more qualified. And they were selling cars. We could see through our platform the conversations there. I'm pleased there was one Kia dealer up north who was responding to leads and was selling cars, and we could see that they were one of the great examples we had. And I think as we've come out the other side, I think there are two main trends. The first one is that while people are much more willing to do their research online and take it that bit further through to talking to the dealer online, more than 70% still want to complete the transaction in the retail environment. And it's probably worth a little aside of just mentioning, we've seen what happens when retailers are taken out of the equation in the last few months. The market stops. So that the importance of the retailer really has shone through. I think the other thing that is makes me slightly nervous, I suppose, is that we've seen the proportion of people saying they're looking to buy a car in 6 months shrink substantially over the course of the 12 weeks. Now, you might take that as a positive. You might say that as they could see the light at the end of the tunnel, they could see dealerships opening in England at least and Northern Ireland coming, that they were just bringing forward their purchase decision. And that might be an entirely positive thing. But I think the level of that drop-off probably hints at this growing nervousness around the economy, growing nervousness about the future. We're talking to you today. We've had McLaren cutting close to 30% of their jobs. We've had Aston Martin this morning taking out 20% of their workforce. We understand there are more of those sorts of announcements coming as we get to the point where they have to make the decisions now with furlough coming to an end, or at least changing to a format where it costs you money. We've had Lookers, 1,500 jobs this morning, I think they've announced. So I think that nervousness is it may dent the bubble that we're enjoying at the moment. And it will be interesting to see what initiatives come forward from government and from retailers and from manufacturers in the future.
I guess probably a question for both of you, but I mean, what can dealers do, I guess, to help to build that trust with consumers now that are nervous about the economy? Like dealers that don't want to just kind of lie down and take that want to actually grow and thrive. Like, what should they be doing right now?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I mean, ultimately, as Jim mentioned, there's been lots of inquiries during lockdown, and for me, first and foremost, is just making sure they're accessible to customers, to support customers, not just from a sales point of view, but from an after sales point of view as well. There's obviously the industry. There's a big part of the industry, obviously, is the after sales revenue it generates and the work from that. So making sure that they're responding quickly to leads, quickly to customer inquiries, and giving them that service that customers require. So it's just about removing barriers. Ultimately, I think Jim mentioned about that it's had a devastating effect on the industry. A lot of people have been placed on furlough in our dealer network, and we got to try and get those people back into the business as soon as possible. Because inevitably, with less people, you've got potential to have a less, your response times could suffer as a result. So it's about getting the teams back in place, bringing them back up to speed as well, because having been out of the business for a couple of months, there's quite a few things to catch up on. So just making sure that trying to get to a degree of normality as quickly as possible. Because there's lots of customers out there who are, coming to the end of their finance agreements as well, and we need to keep them mobile. So, making sure that we're there to support is crucial.
Yeah.
And Jim, the dealers that have been replying to inquiries in the last couple of weeks, what have you been seeing that they've been doing? What have they been doing really well that I guess other dealers can replicate?
Yeah, I can really only echo what's been said. It's about doing the basics well. We have surveyed our audience on how quickly they expect a response, and absolutely, they were more patient at the height of lockdown, but now the patience is gone, not just for a response, but also for the waiting time for the vehicle that they want to get their hands on. A majority are saying they're willing to wait less than 4 weeks between making an inquiry and buying the vehicle. And that really just underlines the importance, I think, as said, of dealing with the inquiries quickly, dealing with them efficiently, making sure that you have a flexible mindset. If you haven't got the vehicle that they specifically want, how can you get them into one that you do have in stock? And then I think there is also a job to do with managing expectations. I think a lot of people sort of smell blood in the car industry and think they're going to get a terrific deal. And they need to look at the bigger picture. And we have been saying this from very early on. Supply and demand is at work here. And while some of the really switched on manufacturers have got their factories running as fast as they can, I do think there is going to be, I think there'll probably be an initial surge of good deals as people try and turn stock into cash. But I don't think it will last very long. And I think the consumers need to, there needs to be an education process with consumers as to what the realistic expectations are. And I also think we need some clarity quickly on whether there will be an incentive program. I can feel this head of steam building in the background already. And that's not going to be good for OEMs or retailers, because people will hold off if they think there's a chance of that coming. And I think there is a major decision needs to be made quickly for the good of the car industry on that, either way.
Just, Jim, going back to one of the stats that you mentioned, which I think is fascinating, that over 70% of people still want to go into the retail store. That seems to go against everything we expect, doesn't it, in terms of more people shopping online, even for cars. David, do you think that figure will change in the near future? Do you think we'll see more people moving to online sales for cars?
I think more people will be using digital channels to research, obviously, have that instant access to the information, so I think digital channels are more and more important. I still think the role of the dealer network is crucial, though. A car purchase is it's a sizable purchase, isn't it, for individuals? Second to a home purchase, really. The industry is moving on so quickly, and the technology is changing so quickly, and people need to understand the technology. And the best way to do that is to go to visit a dealership and have, the new technology, explained to them. I think customers appreciate that direct dialogue. So I think they have a vital role. I mean, it's interesting during the lockdown period, a lot of brands have got online capabilities, but the sales results haven't really shown that in essence. So I think it's of course, it's gonna be more important moving forward, but I still see the dealer network having a big role in the future direction.
Absolutely. Is that what you kind of discovered, Jim? Is that your thoughts as well?
Yeah, very much so. You probably would sum it up by saying that most consumers want to do the bits that aren't fun online and quickly, efficiently, and the bits that are fun, they want to indulge themselves. I'm happy to buy a fridge online. I don't want to buy my car online. I want to enjoy that process. I want to spend, whether it's £300 a month or £30,000, I want to enjoy that, spending that money. I don't want it to be a chore. And it's really, I will do the bits that are a chore in the most efficient and pain-free way possible, which I think in many ways is online. And then I'll indulge myself in that showroom.
Yeah. David, how does this impact marketing? Is the traditional marketing methods that dealerships have taken on board and used, are they still relevant, or are there different things people should be doing these days?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture. I mean, if you just look at Kia as a brand, we're still relatively a new brand in the UK. Less than 30 years old against other OEMs that are 100 years old and such. So we've still got a role to play in terms of generating a kind of full brand awareness, which we use traditional methods like TV. TV is still an important medium for us to highlight Kia as a brand. But of course, digital marketing, more targeted marketing is becoming more and more important. Social channels are becoming more and more important. And I think the key is, going back to the point I made earlier, is about accessibility. And I think digital channels give you that instant response and that instant accessibility with a customer, and an ability to give a two-way conversation as opposed to a one-way conversation. So, we're obviously investing a significant part of our budget in digital social channels. And I think dealers are also doing the same. It's not to say that the traditional formats of TV and print are gone, because I still think they've got an important role to play. Whenever we're on TV, we see a dramatic increase in our web traffic. There's a direct correlation every time we have TV campaigns to our web traffic. But it's about trying to build a comprehensive marketing plan that looks at all the different touch points and tries to get that multiplier effect ultimately.
So for a dealership that's watching this podcast now, what would your top 3 marketing tips be for them?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's probably things about, it's keeping it simple, really. It's about understanding the customer journey, as I mentioned, and understand the different touch points and the processes behind that to then maximize the opportunity. So, building on that is try to look through the lens of a customer ultimately, and then make sure that you are being accessible and communicating effectively through that. I'm a firm believer of being brilliant at the basics. And, you can talk about investment in marketing and media, but even just the basics of running a dealership, when you look at the marketing mix, it's not just promotion, there's place as well. And, I've previously been an area manager, and, the good dealers are the dealers that are out there walking the pitch in the morning, looking at their used car stock, making sure that it looks pristine, knowing where the best place on their used car pitch is for those cars that are a little bit stickier in their stock profile. So it's just being really brilliant at those basic things of housekeeping. It's not just about investing in media channels. It's a combination of all those things.
Yeah, marketing doesn't have to be difficult, does it? It's supposed to be simple. And Jim, in the research you've done, did anything come from that in terms of what marketing channels and what customers expect to be, how they expect to be targeted by car dealerships?
I think, again, to summarise it in a short sentence, is they expect to be targeted on their own terms, and even if it's not on their own terms, make them think it's on their own terms. I think what customers really want is a, as simple, enjoyable as experience as possible. This is not a set-up story, but last summer I had a Kia e-Niro long-termer. I took it to a dealership. My in-laws live in Carmarthenshire, and took it to a Gravels, I think it's Gravels dealership there. And I have no idea how they perform in your annual surveys or anything like that, but the experience was extraordinary. And it's a dealer in a fairly rural part of Wales, but they knew every customer that walked in. The fact I walked in and wasn't someone they knew just meant they looked after me better. All I wanted to do was charge the car. They couldn't have been nicer. They couldn't have chatted to me more. I kind of was probably processed as was I a potential customer without even realising it. And it's that sort of family type approach that I think really does pay dividends on one hand. And then I think on the other side, it's taking advantage of what the OEM can offer you. And I think particularly at the moment, we're seeing a sort of patchwork of approaches from different people. But I think the point that's been made around OEMs being able to provide more reassurance perhaps than the dealer group. The brand Kia is probably greater than some of the dealership, even the big dealership brand names. And I think for a dealership to be able to offer a consistent, reassuring message around that safety and reassurance is really, really critical. And I think if I was within the dealer group, I would be looking to my manufacturers to really provide the assets that reassure my customers.
It's great to hear it from the customer's mouth, really, as well, with that, isn't it? Jim, thinking about looking towards the future, as David says, that things are changing so rapidly. What technology gets you most excited in the automotive industry?
Yeah, I think probably it's the short term that has got my attention around electrification and how that side of the market is going to move on. I think the focuses are autonomy and electrification, but I think it's electrification that is the immediate problem and opportunity. And I think how that's being dealt with and tackled by different manufacturers is fascinating. I think some are really going for it, some are holding back, waiting to see what's happening. But I think what we're seeing increasingly is, you have to go for it, and you have to go for it really before the consumer demand is fully there. And you have to take the gamble, and it's how big you make that gamble and how you go for it. Kia is a great example, not just to make David happy, but it is a great example of going for it really positively. It's on record. We gave the e-Niro our car of the year 2 years ago. I would be surprised if that is a profit-making car, but my goodness, it is almost a era-defining car for this early stage of electric vehicles, for what it offered, for the price when it was launched in terms of range and capability. It redefined the market. And I think by redefining the market, it changed the perception of Kia. Having the best car launched in the past year, according to third-party independent opinion, is a very, very powerful thing. And if brands want to move their positioning and want to grow it, then that's that sort of gamble that can pay off.
Definitely. And how do you think that will change the dealership, David? The dealership of the future, if we look, say, 10 years ahead, will it look significantly different to what it is now, do you think?
What, because of electrification?
Yeah, and because of the rate at which technology and the drivetrain technology is changing, is it happening at a point where it's going to significantly change the showroom experience?
I think we're obviously always looking at ways to improve the environment, but we're also very conscious of not creating too big an investment for our partners. It's trying to find that balance, isn't it? Really, it's very easy to come up with vanity projects, isn't it? Really, which it's about the cost benefit solution, isn't it? We've got to make sure that whatever we're adding, whether from a technology perspective, it's adding to the experience the customers receiving, and it's cost effective. I think obviously cost accessibility of new technology is getting better, whether it be digitalization within the showrooms, and that's areas that we're looking at. But we should also remember that, why do people want to visit dealerships? It's ultimately to jump in the car, to touch and feel the car.
Yep.
That's the key, isn't it, really? So a lot of the focus is making sure that we display the cars as well as we can, and we explain the technology. And I think for that you need the personal interaction with the sales executives.
Yeah. And it again comes back to that 70% of people want to go to the dealership, and that probably isn't going to change for the foreseeable future, is it? Jim, do you agree with that in terms of what the future dealership looks like?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. I do agree with it, but I can see that some manufacturers are trying to find ways around it and ways to change it, and they will go ahead with that, I suspect, particularly given some of the pilot projects they've been running. They kind of see this future where a dealership could just become a sort of either a handover area or some kind of sort of customer sales interaction area, shall we say. So I think that physical presence is going to be crucial. I can see in some ways how it might change, but I can also see strongly the arguments of retailers are good at what they do. This is a supremely complex and difficult business. How far do manufacturers really want to get their tentacles into this? Are they best placed to do it? Do we believe a manufacturer will always know more about retail than a retailer with all that experience? There has to be some respect for the very different skill sets within it, and there has to be a way that retailers can exist profitably into the future. I don't think, for all their love of scale, I don't think manufacturers necessarily want to take on retail as well as everything else that they have involved. That said, I do believe it's an industry that can improve massively and can improve what it does significantly, even just by looking at rivals elsewhere. So I think there is a lot of change coming, but I do still see retailers at the heart of it.
And just thinking about areas where they can improve, does the website sit at the heart of that, do you think, Jim? Are there things that dealership websites don't do that they should be doing at the moment?
Yeah, I think I think there are. I think there's a very varied patchwork of quality of dealer websites out there at the moment. I think, if I'm brutally honest, some of the practices employed by car retailers in the past have been around making the journey harder in order to get a better result. And I think that's going to have to be stripped out. I don't think people have the patience for it, and I think they're perhaps a bit more wise to seeing game is being played. But I don't think a brilliant website will necessarily lead to brilliant sales. In fact, I don't think it will lead to brilliant sales alone at all. I think getting a good, slick, efficient website probably is enough. But you have to combine that with a lot of skills, including a lot of traditional ones, to really see the benefits of it.
Would you agree with that?
So if it's not, I guess, the website that is going to lead to those kind of influx of brilliant sales, I guess, David, a good one for you is looking at the dealer network at the moment. What channels are you seeing are working really well to drive that influx of sales and inquiries?
I think social channels are obviously becoming more and more important, aren't they? And so we're investing a bit more in terms of social channels, making sure that we're making the car the star and really focusing on the product and building value in the product and building desire in the product. I think there's always a tendency to go to the deal a bit too quickly, I think, in the industry. And I think pulling it back and focusing on the product is really, really important, and building value in the product and showing all the tech, the great aesthetics of the car, the quality of the car. So they're really important. So and social channels have a good way of doing that, because you've got the likes of Instagram and which really showcases the styling and the design of the cars to build that desire. So I think that's really important. It's about, we talked about the customer journey, isn't it? And it's about making it as frictionless as possible. Yeah. That's crucial to try and maximize opportunities. And those businesses that the easiest to do business with ultimately will be the most successful, I feel.
Yeah, and it's about the kind of brand persona you have on those channels as well, isn't it? Do you think brands are doing that well in the industry at the moment, David? And putting yourself to one side when you look at, without naming any names, obviously, but
building a brand is about consistency. The great brands out there are really, ruthlessly consistent in their approach. And you talk about the likes of Apple and those kind of people, isn't it? Really, they have that ability to make things simple. And it's about all the different channels that you use, just reinforcing that. So I think that's really important. As an industry, I'm sure we can get better at that. That was part of the reason why I joined Kia was I saw the opportunity there to push the brand further. We've come a long way in the last 10 years. Exponential growth in the last 10 years, really, and the brand is on a journey still. Still some work to be done, but it's about investing in the right channels and having the consistency across the creative to really build the brand perception and challenge people's perceptions. I think when you look at Kia as a brand, we're still seen as, years ago we were seen as a challenger brand and a value brand. I think in the last few years, with the likes of Sportage, with the likes of E-Niro, Stinger, we're challenging people's perceptions of Kia. And we're now firmly a mainstream brand, regularly in the top 10 in terms of vehicle sales, and competing with the more traditional mainstream European brands who have been here a lot longer than us. But we've still got a long way to go, and that's the part of the excitement of my role, really.
And what do you think, Jim? Do you like what you see in terms of social media output from brands?
Yeah, I think it's inconsistent. If you look at it on a brand level, some are doing it very well, and some are doing it not so well. And I think it is that it's first of all knowing what your message is, which I'm not sure all brands do, and then I think that, as David says, delivering it consistently and sort of emphatically is absolutely crucial. But there are some brands out there that do it fantastically, and probably deserve to be mentioned in the offices of Apple, back as a car manufacturer who is doing it well. There are some who I do think do a terrific job, but not all by any means.
Can you think of any specific examples of marketing campaigns that you've seen recently that really put a smile on your face, or thought, yeah, they've nailed this?
I think the one that it may defy convention, and it may be an unfair example, but the Fiat 500, can almost do no wrong. They've nailed that consistently for year after year after year. They are lucky in that the product lends itself in every department, from the fact that its heritage to its sort of look and cutesiness, to the fact that it defies its badge and its brand positioning to be attractive to really high-end brands who want to associate with it.
Yeah.
So could it be a case study for everyone else? Not necessarily, but I do think the way they've consistently nailed that has been really interesting. I think that transition to electrification that's coming for them will be interesting, but when you look at some of the average sale price data of a Fiat 500, and you peg that back to the brand and the size of the car, you've got to hand it to them. They've done a good job.
Smart, isn't it? What do you think, David? Any particular campaigns that stick in your mind?
That's a good question. I mean, I think Jim's correct. Fiat 500 has done a great job over the years of that, being ruthlessly consistent and almost putting the 500 as a kind of as a fashion accessory more than anything. You look at the different campaigns, the different seasons they've done with the car, which was very, very clever. I suppose I should be careful in saying other car brands being here. In terms of long time ago in childhood memories, what are the adverts that really stick in my mind? And one that does stick in my mind, probably in the VW Golf one, where I think a young Spanish couple are driving across, and then you're hearing this annoying squeak, and the guy's feeling around the dashboard trying to find where that squeak is in the car, and then he pulls up to a garage and gets a guy out from the garage, and it turns out to be his wife or girlfriend's earring that's squeaking, and then it comes out the strap line. If only everything was as reliable as a VW Golf. And they've had that consistency, haven't they, over the years with Golf, and it's got the heritage a bit like Fiat 500, but they've been really consistent in terms of it's about the reliability of Golf. So that, I suppose, sticks in my mind. I mean, for me, good campaigns connect with you emotionally and make you feel good, and build trust in the brand, and take you back. And I suppose soundtracks are really important when you see good TV ads. Thinking, I suppose, off piste in terms of recent adverts that I remember. It's a bit of a random one, but the Argos Christmas advert with I think it was the Book of Dreams, and the guy pretending to play drums to Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me, and then his little girl comes.
That's a great show.
That just goes back to before, when I was younger, during Christmas you'd circle all the little toys that you'd want in that Argos catalogue. So it's just, it connects with you. Those good adverts connect with you as an individual.
And they're timeless, aren't you? You remember them, like you say.
Yeah, so they're the adverts that really stick in my mind, the ones that have a connection point. And like I say, soundtrack has a big part of that, to kind of plant it in your brain to remember.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, some good choices there.
Brilliant, yeah. And we love to, on a completely different subject, we love to ask this question because it's, I think, as we've discovered today, as we knew anyway, really, that the industry changes so fast, and that becomes a bit of a cliche. But bearing that in mind, Jim, if you could go back 5 years and tell yourself something about the industry, what would it be?
Oh gosh, it's fairly obvious, but I don't think anyone could have predicted the powertrain conversations that we're having now. They were coming down the line, undoubtedly, but the sort of collapse in the love for diesel, the reversal of that, the way, frankly, the narrative has been corrupted around that as well. I do believe there is merit in the modern diesel that just isn't allowed to shine through. And this acceleration of electrification, partly in the wider public conscious, but probably most headline-grabbingly, if I talk to my kids, if I brought a Tesla home, they'd be more excited than if I brought a Ferrari home. And 5 years ago, I am slightly disappointed in them, but I have to live with it. That is extraordinary. And genuinely, as I said, I had an e-Nero for 6 months. Apologies for saying this. It didn't have the appeal perhaps of a Tesla, but it was a talking point at school, and there is a generation coming through for whom electrification is, to my surprise, it's front of their minds. These brands are cool, and that is going to change the landscape. And if you don't run fast enough, there are brands that are going to be left behind.
Yeah, that's a fascinating comparison, isn't it? Certainly with the rise of Tesla, because it's not a poster car, is it, at all? I don't think people would put a Tesla on the wall as they would have done with a Ferrari F50 or something. But like you say, kids these days will be far more interested in that because it's cool, isn't it? It completely redefines the industry in that respect. David, same question to you. What would you tell yourself 5 years ago?
Yeah, crikey.
Don't bother with 2020.
Yeah. I suppose it's similar to Jim, really, the technology side of it. I mean, it's just looking at where we were 5 years ago to where we are now in terms of technology is staggering, isn't it, really? How quickly things have developed and how quickly things have changed in terms of the capability of electric cars and, the range, that you can get from electric cars. All the new cars coming, one of the biggest barriers of electrification has been range anxiety, hasn't it, for so many years, and now that's not becoming an issue as much. So what would I have told myself 5 years ago? become an expert quicker at electric cars, basically, and understand the technology a lot better back then. And then perhaps I could have, accelerated my career path a bit more.
I love that. Guys, we could talk all day, I think, as always, but I'm conscious of your time, and I'm sure we'll get you on the show again at some point. But thanks so much for your insight. It's been fascinating. Hopefully you found it useful as well.
And hopefully next time we can actually get you in the studio.
Fingers crossed. We'll be back in the same room at some stage, won't we?
I'm sure.
Thank you, though, guys. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
You were both amazing.
Bye-bye.
That was great. Thank you very much.
That leaves it for me to say thanks for watching or listening wherever you happen to be. You can find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify. We're literally everywhere. Just subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Armchair Marketing.